back. I hope you have watered yourselves and fed yourselves correctly for this afternoon's session. We sold all of the underpants, so there are none left. The Club Brugge will be sending some more for next time round. This afternoon, we're going to kick off the session with Ralf Rangnick, who's sitting next to me, who you may remember if you were here a couple of years ago, told us about the exciting adventure of Red Bull, which you were just beginning 2 years ago, personally, both with Salzburg and Leipzig, of course, in Germany. Ralf, as you probably know better than I, is a former coach, head coach at several German clubs such as Schalke, Stuttgart, Hanover, Offenheim, of course, with the adventure which you took them up into the top division. 2 years on from the discussion we had here in Switzerland, how is the project in Salzburg and in Leipzig, and how have you adapted to those different scenarios that we were talking about and your footballing philosophy? Because we're talking about the DNA of a football club and the identity and how important it is.
I mean, if we look back now for the last two and a half years, a lot of things have happened. In Salzburg in the first year, I mean, the first official game we had was in Dudelange. As you probably know, in 2 legs we lost. After 20 minutes on the stand, I didn't see a good game, but for me it was absolutely impossible that we could drop out against this team. But in the end it happened, and we made a lot of changes after that game with regard to the squad and also with regard to the staff in Salzburg. And last season we won the double, and we did well in the EuroLeague, although we didn't manage to qualify for the Champions League, but we did well. I think we're very unlucky to lose and drop out against Basel in the eighth. No, it was the eighth final. But still, I think it was a good season last year, and we have an exciting squad with some young players who, like in Basel, are now on the list of bigger clubs in the top 5 leagues. So the development in Salzburg is good. We have the kind of squad we were trying to get, but the experience against Dudelange accelerated the whole process. And in Leipzig, we started level 4 with an average attendance at the time of 2,000. Meanwhile, we are in the top 6 in the second division after 2 consecutive promotions, and the average attendance is now 30,000. We played against St. Pauli last weekend in front of 40,000. So the development there is amazing, especially with regard to the public interest.
It's a very exciting adventure. What was the philosophy that's driving you in this dual adventure?
I mean, the difference between us and other clubs is that in the first place when we sign or when we scout new players, we are only fishing in a very small pond. We are only interested in players between 17 and 22, 23. From our experience, a player at the age of 23 is no longer a talent. And if you look at other clubs and the development, even in the German national team, players start their careers earlier than 10 or 15 years ago, and they have to end or finish their career earlier than it used to be. So we are actually only scouting and trying to sign players between 17 and maximum 23. And the second difference is that in both clubs we are trying to implement and to play the same kind of the same style of football. And of course, between the 2 clubs, we are trying to use and make use of the synergies that can be developed out of those 2 factors.
So, I imagine the choice of men that you hire throughout the 2 clubs is primordial. How do you go about recruiting the right people to put into practice all these things that you want?
I mean, what I did in both clubs, I spent 4 weeks, 5 weeks in Salzburg, a few weeks more after Dudelange than I thought I would have to spend, and another the next 4 weeks in Leipzig just to get to know the people who were already in place at the time. And then it was a question, are the right people in the right place? I'm completely convinced that you have to have the right man or woman for the right job, and that's what we were trying to change. The people who were already in the right spot, in my opinion, we were trying to keep. And in other situations, we needed a change. Some of the positions we even didn't have at all. For example, the sports psychologists we have now in both clubs, a nutrition who is now for both clubs responsible for that the players eat and drink the right things during the week and after the games. So those were the changes we were trying to make, and of course I tried to use my network that I had developed in the years before, especially in Hoffenheim, and many of the people I worked together with in either Schalke or Hoffenheim are now with us in Red Bull.
What's the reaction locally to the presence of Red Bull as the brand in these football clubs? Are your fans generally happy because there's success on the field? Or is there also perhaps a backlash concerning the commercialization of their football club?
I mean, it's different in the two cities. In Salzburg, Red Bull came, I think, in 2005. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure, maybe it was 2004, 2005, when the former Austria Salzburg club was bankrupt. So Mr. Mateschitz took the club, or more or less bought the club. Mm. And at the time, they decided to change almost everything. They changed the name of the stadium. They changed even the colors of the jerseys. They changed the badge. Had I been there at the time, I would have tried to persuade him to do it in a more moderate way, because, as we all know, football is an emotional business, and the supporters identify themselves through those things. And there are good reasons that in England, for example, no matter who wants to buy a club, those are the three things they cannot change. And at the time when Mr. Mateschitz and Red Bull took over the club in Salzburg, they did all those changes, and that was the reason why, in the beginning, well, the Austria Salzburg fans, they more or less left the club. Mm-hmm. And then it was difficult to win other fans back and bring them back into the stadium. Meanwhile, when we have good, attractive games in the league, or especially in the Euro League or in the Champions League qualifying, then the stadium is sold out. But in the league of 10, in the Austrian league, I mean, out of those 10 clubs, 6 are small clubs, more or less village clubs, like smaller clubs in Germany, like Paderborn. But in Germany, you have 2, 3, no more than 4 clubs out of 18. Mm. In Austria, it's 6 out of 10, and if you play against them 4 times every season, and if you play them in the cup, you play them 5 times every year, and well, this is not very exciting, to be honest. In Leipzig, it's different. The club started to exist in 2009 on level 5. At the time, well, the people in Leipzig didn't really know what to do with this new club, because in former times there were Sachsen Leipzig, Chemie Leipzig, those were the old big traditional clubs, VfB Leipzig. But they all, in the end, well, went bankrupt. And when Mr. Mateschitz decided to start this venture in Leipzig at the time, people were very apprehensive. And I think this was a big step in the last 2 years. That's why I told you that the development regarding the attendances in the home games is amazing. Even away, we played Sandhausen last Sunday, and 600 fans traveled all the way on Sunday, 4 weeks before Christmas, to Sandhausen, which was a 5-hour drive by coach. So it shows that within Leipzig, the team has been not only accepted, but through the way we play with young, unknown players. When we signed them, nobody knew. Players like Yusuf Paulsen or Joshua Kimmich, they were even within Germany pretty unknown. And I think that the fans in the city, that they acknowledge the way we play and the way the team works together.
How would you describe the identity of those two teams, the style that you're trying to bring?
I mean, when Mr. Mateschitz called me 2006, that was when we last met on the panel in the Dolder Hotel. The average age of the two squads in Salzburg and Leipzig was, I don't know, 29, almost 30 in Salzburg, and 28, 29 in Leipzig. The players they were signing at the time, they signed their last, or well, yeah, more or less their last contract. And when he asked me what I would change if I were responsible, I said, well, the commercial slogan of Red Bull is "Red Bull gives you wings." And I think that the major target group of Red Bull is, I would say, between 16 and 25. And young people, they don't identify themselves with 30-year-olds. This happens to people who are the same age or slightly older. So what we changed now in both clubs is the average age. In Salzburg, the average age of our first team is 24, 25, and in Leipzig it's similar. So we reduced the average age of the whole squad by 4 years in the last 2 years.
I know that with Salzburg you've had some frustrations as regards to qualifying for European competition. You're obviously aiming to play in the Champions League, and this season you were knocked out by Malmö, the Swedish club. What's the reaction from Mr. Matschitz when this kind of thing happens? How frustrated is he, and does he pick up his phone when these things happen or not?
We must also have some kind of curse. I don't know, a Champions League curse. I haven't found out who is the one to blame for. Marcel, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, the first experience, Dudelange, was a disaster. I mean, this was the only one where I would say it was a disaster, because that should never have happened. But now looking backward, I don't know if the whole development would have been that rapid if we hadn't had that Dudelange disaster. And okay, last year we dropped out against Fenerbahce, which was again very unlucky. We were the better team in both legs, but still something was lacking. We were not experienced enough to. After being 1-0 up in the home game, we were 1-0 up, and then we conceded the equalizer, and then we were 1-0 up in Istanbul. In the end, we lost 3-1. This year was the year where everybody thought in the team, in the club, if we don't make it this year, we will never make it. And I mean, we were 2-0 up against Malmö. We had 2 or 3 chances where Kevin Campbell was 1-on-1 on the goalkeeper. Would have been the 3-0. In the end, we would have probably won 4-5-0, but we didn't score. And in the last minute, we got a goal, which I don't know if some of you saw the goal. It was a long ball. The goalkeeper thought it was his ball. Frankie Schiemer moved backward, headed the ball out of his hands, and the ball fell in front of the striker, and it was all of a sudden 2-1. And conceding a goal in the last minute is almost like conceding with the away goal rule 2 goals. And then the problems we had with Sadio Mane before the second leg. I mean, I think this was, looking backward now, the decisive thing that we couldn't prevent the development with Sadio Mane. He didn't play. He didn't turn up for the day before we left to Malmö. He didn't even show up for the training because he was so desperate to leave the club, and he was afraid that nobody would come up with the right offer. And therefore, we had to play without him, and another 2 or 3 players were injured, and then we lost the second leg 3-0. Quite deservedly on the night, because we were just not able to perform on the night the kind of football we normally could play.
So what was the reaction from...
I mean, the Malmö, now, to be honest, we were almost 3 or 4 weeks, everybody was paralyzed. The team, everybody, even myself, it took me at least 5-6 days to go back to normal business and try to find something useful and take something useful out of that experience. It was I mean, the 4 weeks after that, we lost every game. We lost 3 games in a row in the league, which has never happened before. But then after 4 weeks, fortunately enough, we achieved a turnaround, and the last couple of weeks, the team plays not only successful, but also attractive football, the way we played at Celtic or against Dinamo Zagreb. We won in Zagreb 5-1 and 2-1 at Celtic Park last week. I think now it looks like Red Bull football again, and the way the team is playing currently is pretty attractive again.
So it's going to be for next year then?
I don't know. I mean, what's happening now is similar to the experience that Bernhard is having in Basel. Of course, players like Sadio Mane, he has already left. Kevin Campbell will be the next player who will probably leave next season at the latest. Andre Ramalho, we have quite a few young players who are now ready to take the next step. And this is a normal result of the change of transfer policy. I mean, we now sign players who sign their first or second contract in their career and want to develop their career step by step. Of course, when they are ready for the next step, you have to let them go if you get the right offer. And then the next players must be in the pipeline already. Our reserve team in Liefering is probably the youngest professional team in Europe with an age average of 19.3. They are on equal terms with the other top teams, top 2. So they're second, I think, in the league right now. And there are quite a few players who will hopefully be playing in our first team next season.
And hopefully helping you to get into the Champions League.
That's what I said to a journalist the other day. We will probably make it when nobody thinks we will qualify, when we are in a situation where we are the underdogs. And I think in Malmö, another thing that came into account was that nobody thought that we would be able to lose against that team. And we even saw ourselves as the clear favorites in those two legs. And then when you cannot win anything, when you can only lose for a younger team, makes things more difficult.
But how can an Austrian club compete? We had this question with Basel, of course. If you qualified for the Champions League, you would find yourself up against clubs with such huge budgets compared to you. How can you possibly compete with these guys?
I mean, Basel shows it how they can compete. I mean, Basel, the big advantage Basel still has, although they have been so successful in the last couple of years, no matter whom they play, they are the underdogs. Right? And it's much easier to play at Anfield Road next week. I can imagine, everybody can imagine what will happen in Liverpool when they drop out against Basel. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if Basel won that game or at least drew. And I think that would probably cause an earthquake in Liverpool after their poor performance in the Premiership so far. But this can happen. And I would be absolutely convinced with the team we have right now in Salzburg, although it sounds strange when I say that after losing against Malmö, had we qualified for the group phase, we would have had any chance to even stay in the Champions League after Christmas. But we didn't make it, so now the ambition is to go as far as possible in the EuroLeague. We qualified as the first in our group, and hopefully this is the new goal we have set. Everybody in the club is ambitious to go further than last season, and we will see.
With your Spanish striker.
Yes, the two strikers, they can score, each of them 30 goals every season. Kevin Campbell, we have Massimo Bruno, a young player from Belgium, which we signed in the beginning. In fact, we do the same that Basel has shown us in the last 10 years. They are still ahead of us because they've been doing a great job. And of course, what is possible in Basel, in Switzerland, must also be possible for a club like ours in Austria.
So there's the headline for the English newspapers is "Earthquake in Liverpool next week." A word about the Leipzig situation, because Salzburg, you're already top of the league and doing very well, and it looks like you're building a successful future. In Leipzig, you've started further down, as you just said, coming up from the fourth level. You're now in the second division. Things are moving fast, lots of people in the stadium, lots of excitement. What's the reaction from the rest of German football to this advent, this new club coming up and threatening teams in the Bundesliga next season, perhaps?
I mean, it's different. You have to differentiate between the fans and the supporters of the big traditional clubs. Of course, they don't like us. Maybe they fear that we might take away one of their places. I think that the officials of the other clubs, they have realized that we do it in a special way. I mean, this year we were the only club in the second division who didn't sign a single player from another second division club, and last year we didn't sign a single player from another third division club. So this is pretty unusual. I don't know if there is any other club in the league who has done that. Experience-wise, we are probably the club with the lowest number of minutes that our players had played on second or first division level before we started. And this has probably been realized and acknowledged. So you have to differentiate between the supporters. Emotionally, of course, they don't like us, the supporters outside of Leipzig. I think the media and other sports directors, other coaches in other teams, I think they realize that we do it in a different way than some people think that we would do it with the money. I mean, most of the people try to reduce it, that we have more money available than others, which is true. But the question is, how are we using that money? What do we do with the money?
So what do you do with the money?
Well, I said when we started 2 years ago, we invested the available money into the staff. We were trying to get the best possible people to work with the players. And then, I mean, I tend to call this a learning system. Then we try to use those staff members, and we have to give them blue chips, highly talented young players who are worth to be trained in these surroundings by those people and then develop them into top-class players. And the two names I mentioned early on with Yusuf Poulsen and Joshua Kimmich are two examples. Joshua Kimmich was an under-19 player who, outside of Stuttgart, not that many people knew, and Stuttgart themselves, they thought he should play in the under-19 team, although they had a reserve team in the same league than ours. That was the chance when we could try to get him, and he decided to join our club. We found a solution with Stuttgart, and he played. Not only did he play every game, he was one of the best players of the whole season. And he was now a member of the under-21 squad and playing in the under-19, German under-19 team who won the European title. And this is one example. The other one is Yusuf Poulsen, young player from Denmark, whom we scouted for 6 months. And in the end, we managed to persuade him to join us in Leipzig, third division level. And now since then, he's been going all the way to level 2.
How much of how important is it to play in a certain way for the brand, which is Red Bull? Mr. Mateschitz has a vision of a certain kind of football that he asks you to implement?
I mean, Mr. Mateschitz himself said to me when we met 2011, no, 12, that he's not a football man. But he has visions, and this is what I like most about him. The same happened in Formula One when he started with Red Bull 5, 6, 7 years ago. Then immediately in his one of his rare press conferences, he said, I want to win the Formula One title. And at the time, the people at Ferrari and Mercedes, they were laughing at him. So he has probably drunk too much Red Bull before he gave that interview. And we all know what happened after that. They won the title 4 years in a row. And when I explained to him how I would try to develop the two football venues, that the way to sign young, unknown, talented players would fit much more to the brand, and the way we want to play with an attacking, high-pressing, quick transitional football also fits much better to Red Bull than waiting, playing apprehensive, playing some counter-attacks. I think this doesn't fit the brand of Red Bull. So he said, yes, that sounds good, do it that way. And I must say after Dudelange, because you asked me if he answered the phone, I mean, he was not amused after Dudelange, and he thought, what are you doing? I mean, we could have kept our old people. We would not have needed someone from Germany to drop out against Dudelange. But I think meanwhile he has realized that we didn't do anything wrong, or that we didn't do too much wrong things in the last 2 years. And I think meanwhile he has the trust that we deal and do the right things with the money he gives to us.
If Leipzig are promoted to the top division next season, will that make your life more complicated? Can you be sports director of 2 clubs at the same time in top division football?
No, but that was clear from the very first day. I mean, should both clubs play in their first divisions, I can only be a sports director for one of the 2 clubs for 2 reasons. One is that theoretically both clubs could then qualify for Europe, and we want both clubs to be able to play in the European competition. This is the difference between us and Udinese and Watford, for example. And it would be possible, but of course it would not be possible if I was the sporting director for both clubs. So in that case, I would have to decide for one of the 2 clubs, and I mean, it's clear that I would then concentrate and focus on Leipzig. Yeah, that would be, and the other reason is that even the time management right now that Leipzig is in the 2nd division, it's pretty difficult. I mean, it needs good planning. I need my people in both venues who look after things, because I cannot be at both places at the same time.
How valuable is it for you, having already been through something similar with Hoffenheim?
I mean, of course, it's valuable to have the experience to know what is important, which knobs you have to turn, or which screws you have to use. But it's again, every season, every team is a different situation. You have to develop things. You have to make sure that you prepare the team. This is probably obviously been done through our head coaches to win the next game. But I think we have the experience to know what you do in special situations. If the pressure comes up, if you don't win 3 or 4 games in a row, that the coaches know that they have a sporting director who knows what it means to be in a situation like this. And I mean, we are also pretty proud. In 2.5 years, we haven't sacked a single coach in the 2 teams, not in Liefering, not in Salzburg, not in Leipzig. Okay, we lost our coach Roger Schmidt to Leverkusen, but this is also part of our DNA of our job. If we allow our players to be ready to take their next step, what should I say to Roger Schmidt when he has an offer from Frankfurt and Leverkusen? I cannot tell him, no, you have to stay. So if he wants to take that next step, we have to be ready to have the next coach to develop him and help him to come on the same level that Roger Schmidt had.
I'm going to give people the chance to ask questions. But just my last quick question for you. On a personal level, Ralf, you've had years as a coach, as a hands-on, with the players. How have you been coping with being a step further back? And I imagine you still have people telephoning you, asking you to come back and be a coach somewhere. Are you tempted?